The assassin. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest.
What up, y'all? You're listening to Sports Talk with Tropp, and I'm your host, Katie Tropp. Well, we got to start it off with a good song today, and it goes like this. Cry, Eagles, cry, you're falling apart at the right time. Cry, Eagles, cry, you're a bunch of cunts. C-U-N-T-S, Eagles are cunts. Yeah, love it. Let's get it started with Week 17 of the NFL. It was really interesting to see how shit went down this week. So let's start it off with this spectacular Eagles game that happened yesterday. The New Orleans Saints at the Philadelphia Eagles. The New Orleans Saints absolutely dominated the Philadelphia Eagles. It was quite hilarious, as a matter of fact. The Eagles have now lost 2 games straight, something of which the Cowboys have yet to do this season. Yeah, the Cowboys haven't lost 2 games in a row, but, you know, when the Cowboys lose, it's, oh my God, the sky is falling, but the Eagles lose 2 in a fucking row, and everybody's like, oh, they're still Super Bowl bound. Well, we'll see about that shit, because right now the Eagles are doing exactly what the Tony Romo-led Cowboys used to do. See, what would used to happen when you were a Cowboys fan and we had Tony Romo and Jason Garrett as our coach, what would always happen is we would have a pretty decent regular season, or we'd make like a little push at the end of the season, and we would always get to December and then just completely fall apart and lose. And that's actually what the Eagles are doing right now. I don't care if Jalen Hurts is hurt, because that's a part of the game. But your backup quarterback has come in, and Gardner Minshew looked like shit yesterday. It was absolutely hilarious. He threw this. There was, it started out Saints were dominating the whole first half, because I did watch this game. I was really hoping the Saints would do what they ended up doing, and that it was great to watch. So the Saints dominated the first half. And then in the second half, the Eagles started to make a slight comeback. And it was, I think it was like 13-10 or something like that. And they're looking like, oh yeah, we're gonna score, we're gonna win this game. And Gardner Minshew throws this interception to Marshawn Lattimore, the cornerback of the New Orleans Saints. And he just runs it right back for a touchdown. And the most hilarious part was watching the crowd shots of the Eagles fans, and one like puts his head in his hands, and I'm just like bursting into laughter because that shit is funny to me. And they go to these other 2 people and they're like fucking hugging and shit. Like, oh my God, it was hilarious to see this Eagles team fall apart, because you know what? Their defense ain't looking that good either. I mean, the New Orleans Saints barely hung on to this game. I mean, they were really lucky to even score 20 points because they pretty much went quiet in the second half. Like the first half, I said they came out pretty solid. They looked okay. Andy Dalton, he made some mistakes, and he just wasn't looking that good. And so, Alvin Kamara, he had 74 yards rushing, but he really wasn't that much of a factor. So, I mean, to me, the Saints just got by. But it's funny because the Eagles didn't look good at all. They had nothing going on. Nobody made a huge spark. Like, A.J. Brown didn't have an amazing game. Miles Sanders didn't have an amazing game. The defense didn't do anything spectacular. So, the Eagles are falling apart at the right time of the season, and it's hilarious. And what's even more hilarious is that the Cowboys actually not only have a shot to win the division, but actually have a shot at the number 1 seed. I'm not really counting on it. I really kind of expect the Eagles to win this next game. I can't recall who they're playing in the final week. I think it's the Giants. Yeah, they're playing the Giants. And so the Giants, they had a big game yesterday. They're playoff bound, so who knows? It's a division matchup. Hopefully the Giants are able to shake some shit up for the Cowboys, but regardless, this is pretty fucking funny to see the Eagles stumbling into the playoffs. All right, then the next game we had was the Arizona Cardinals at the Atlanta Falcons. This actually went as I figured it would go. I figured it would be a close game, and it was. It was back and forth the entire way through because these are two shitty-ass teams. The Falcons were able to eke out the win 20-19. Basically, this game, these two teams basically just traded score for score all the way till the end, and the Falcons were really just able to put together a good last final drive in which they were able to get in field goal position, and they got the game-winning field goal, and the Falcons would go on to win 20-19. And, I mean, really, there isn't anything good to say about either one of these teams. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting Cliff Kingsbury to be fired any second now from the Cardinals. They might let him last just one more week into Week 18, but, I mean, honestly, I kind of feel like the Cliff Kingsbury experiment in Arizona should be over just because, I mean, they really haven't had any type of identity. They haven't made any type of major playoff run, and they really haven't looked like a really good team at all under his tenure. So I kind of feel like it's time to get rid of Kingsbury. You can also tell that he and Kyler Murray, they just aren't seeing eye to eye. And if you have to choose between either one of them, I mean, I think they both suck. You all know how I feel about Twatler Murray. I think he's a big fucking whiny little twat. But they just signed him to the big contract, so you're kind of locked into Kyler at least for another couple of years. Whereas Kingsbury, like I said, he hasn't shown that he's worth a shit. So I'm kind of expecting this dude to be the next firing. If not this week, he's definitely going to be, because a week from today is Black Monday in the NFL. That's when a whole bunch of coaches are fired. So I'm expecting, if anything, Kingsbury's going to be fired next week. But who knows? It's the Cardinals. They never make good decisions. Then the Chicago Bears were at the Detroit Lions. Complete domination by the Lions. They ended up getting the win 41-10. Jared Goff had yet another spectacular game, 21 for 29, 255 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jamal Williams had a great game, 22 carries, 144 yards and 1 touchdown. So this Lions team, they are rolling. I mean, you expect them to beat the Bears. I mean, the Bears are just an awful team. They scored 10 points in the first quarter, and that was it from them. So, yeah, they're 3-13, so they're going to get themselves a pretty solid draft pick, as they should, and they better get something on the offensive side of the ball for Justin Fields, because hell, Fields, even though the Bears didn't do shit yesterday, Fields rushed for over 100 yards yesterday, so they got something in Fields. It's just they need to get him some help. The Detroit Lions are still in playoff contention. As a matter of fact, they end the season against the Green Bay Packers. Whoever wins that game is in the playoffs with the wild card spot. So we'll see what happens there. Both teams are rocking and rolling right now, so that's going to be a pretty damn good game. Then the Denver Broncos were at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs barely got this one, 27-24. It is a division matchup, so I mean that's really what you expect. But the Chiefs just absolutely own the Broncos. The Broncos have not been a good team at all, so I'm really not shocked at all that the Chiefs got this win. Patrick Mahomes went 29 for 42, 328 yards and 3 touchdowns. So the dude just continues to show the league that, hello, I am the MVP. They just, him and McKinnon, they're just really starting to connect as well. So the Chiefs look pretty good on the offensive side of the ball, and the Broncos looked as bad as the Broncos usually look. Then the Miami Dolphins at the New England Patriots. This was another close one. The Patriots did just get the win 23-21. And really, they just put together a really, really good game. Offensively, they put it together. Mac Jones went 20 for 33, 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the big thing was on third down. This guy really learned how to get some conversions on third down, and that was really what put them over the edge in this one. And it's really kind of amusing, too, with the Dolphins, because I really expected this from the Dolphins. I thought they were going to start off hot, and then regardless of what happened with Tua, for me, I don't think it has anything to do with Tua and his injuries. I always thought the Dolphins were going to fall off at some point, and they are doing that because they're just not that good of a team just yet. They do have a lot of offensive firepower, but they haven't set like a winning blueprint, and they just really aren't that good, and this really showed. The New England Patriots defense is one of the best in the league. They score a lot of fucking points, and that's what they did in this one, and they were able to just get a good win here. And they are still in playoff contention, as are the Dolphins. But I just kind of feel like the Dolphins, it doesn't matter because even with what they did in this game, Teddy Bridgewater, he broke his finger yesterday on his throwing hand. So there's a good chance there's going to be no Tua, no Teddy Bridgewater, and they're just going to be left treading water. And they might as well go hang out on the beach because that's where the Dolphins are going to be during the playoffs at least. Then the Indianapolis Colts were at the New York Giants, and damn, it was a really solid game from the Giants. They kicked the shit out of the Colts 38-10. Probably Daniel Jones' best game of the season. He went 19 for 24, 177 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 91 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns rushing. So overall, the dude had 4 touchdowns. So he just had a very solid game. And they just, I mean, really, I don't believe in the Giants at all. Their defense is looking pretty good right now, too. But I kind of feel like they're going to be one of those teams that's just like one and done as soon as the playoffs begin. But they did clinch a playoff berth yesterday. So congratulations to the Giants. Then the Carolina Panthers were at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers, they got another solid win. It actually started out that the Panthers it was looking like that the Panthers were just going to roll to a win. And then all of a sudden, the Bucs just got it going in the second quarter. And man, Tom Brady was throwing bombs to Mike Evans yesterday. I mean, it's funny that Tom Brady haters really want him to fall off. And yeah, he hasn't had that great of a season, but the dude, he still can pass the ball like a motherfucker, and it was proven yesterday. I'm still not sold on the Bucs. They just won their division with the win yesterday. They did get the win 30-24. But I mean, really, they're gonna. I mean, you can't count out Tom Brady, of course, because the dude knows how to win in the postseason. But just overall as a team, not a really good team. But this was a good team win. Their defense held it down, but it was really all about Tom Brady and Mike Evans yesterday. Tom Brady went 34 for 45, 432 yards and 3 touchdowns. So how's that for a fucking old-ass motherfucker who's been in the league for 965 years? I mean, shit. He's passing for 45 attempts, and that's regular for Brady. If you regularly look at this dude's stats every week, it's low if he hasn't attempted 40 passes in the game. Whereas for the most part, you don't want your quarterback to do that. But unfortunately, they rely way too much on him. But he still had a spectacular day. But Mike Evans, it was like his breakout game. He had 10 receptions, 207 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And they were all bombs, too. I mean, they were like, boom, like 50 and 60 yarders from Brady and Evans. And they were just crazy. Also to note, Mike Evans went over 1,000 receiving yards for the season, and this is his 9th season in a row, eclipsing 1,000 yards. And now you got to put that in perspective. He hasn't always had Tom Brady. As a matter of fact, he's only had Tom Brady these last 3 seasons. So the majority of his career was with like Jameis Winston and other bums like that. So 9 seasons in a row of over 1,000 yards receiving is crazy. To top it off, he's only behind Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice had 11 in a row. So Mike Evans could actually tie Jerry fucking Rice. When you're in that type of class, that says a lot about you. So shout out to Mike Evans. He's just had a great career. Definitely an underrated receiver. And I think a lot of people see him more now because he's with Tom Brady, but Mike Evans has always been consistent since the day he was drafted, and it shows with 9 seasons in a row eclipsing the 1,000-yard receiving mark. So great season from you, even though that was like his first really breakout game of the season. It was an overall good game from the Bucs. The Panthers, that basically ends any of their playoff hopes. They're done with that, but that's okay. I kind of feel like the Panthers have. I hope they stay with Wilkes, that coach. Obviously, they're going to interview and explore all they can, but I just kind of feel like the Panthers played great under Wilkes, and if they just they start building around him and his ideas, and I mean they're going to have a great amount of draft picks this season, so. I think the Panthers are ending the season on a good note, even though they're 6-10 right now. But I feel like they're building to be something pretty decent. Then we had the the barn burner that was the Cleveland Browns at the Washington Commanders. First of all, like, I knew it was going to be fucking stupid to start Carson Wentz. This team has no fucking idea what they want to do at the quarterback position, and it showed. Nobody believes in Carson Wentz. Nobody gives a shit about him even on the team. When the media gets on your back and none of your teammates ever, like, stick up for you, that goes to show you're not a locker room guy. Like, for example, Russell Wilson, he's been getting criticized all season long. But when the coach was fired last week, a lot of his teammates came out and were like, Russell is not the problem. And that's a good sign because you want the locker room to have your back. It's something I've continued to say on this show and continue to believe in is you got to be a locker room guy. If you are the leader of the team, your locker room has to have your back. It does not matter how bad you play or how mediocre you are. If you are a locker room dude, that's what you want. And I mean, between Heineke and Wentz, yeah, Wentz is the more talented guy, but you could always tell that Heineke had the locker room and Wentz has never had the locker room. As a matter of fact, I question if Wentz has ever had a locker room because he gets kicked off every fucking team he's on. So I'm not shocked that the Browns came into Washington and won 24-10. As a matter of fact, I mean, while Deshaun Kutson had 3 touchdowns, he only had 9 completions with 18 attempts for 169 yards. So that dude still looks like shit. As a matter of fact, it's actually kind of funny how awful the Cleveland Browns offense has been since he has taken over at quarterback. Like, they used to be one of the top 10 offensive teams in the league, and ever since he's become the starting quarterback, they are now at the bottom of the league in offense. So it's actually kind of shocking they were able to put together a really good game offensively here. A lot of it obviously has to do with Nick Chubb. He rushed for 104 yards. It's like they finally figured out, oh my God, we have one of the best running backs in the league. Let's hand it off to him. But also Amari Cooper had a big game. He had 3 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But it is just hilarious to me to see how bad the Browns are. Even though they got this win, it just goes to show you how bad the Commanders are. Because even the Washington crowd was like booing Carson Wentz like in the first quarter. So not even the crowd wants this dude in the game. So I'm not sure what Ron Rivera was doing. I think this guy really, speaking of coaches I expect to get fired, Ron Rivera, one of them, not because I blame him. It's unfortunately for him, he just walked into a shitty, horrible circumstance, and I kind of feel like he wants to get fired, and maybe that's why he did what he did. Because also at the podium yesterday, after the game, he really wasn't aware that his team could be eliminated yesterday from playoff contention. He actually thought that they still had a shot this coming week if they didn't get the win yesterday. So, and he looked shocked. So that's pretty bad when your coach doesn't even know those type of situations where like every playoff scenario that they should know. So I kind of have a feeling Ron Rivera wants the hell out of Washington, which I can't blame you, dude. But yeah, the Browns, congratulations. You guys got a win. 7-9 season. Looking good. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars were at the Houston Texans, and damn, the Jaguars put on a clinic. They stomped the Texans 31-3. There really wasn't much to say about this game other than Travis Etienne. He had a great game. He rushed for 108 yards and 1 touchdown for the Jaguars. And I mean, really, they just really kicked the crap out of the Texans. But what do you expect? The Texans, at this rate, are probably just really looking forward to that first pick in the draft so they can mess that up too, because that's all the Texans know how to do. Then moving on to the afternoon games, which this game turned out to be probably the best game of the day. The San Francisco 49ers at the Las Vegas Raiders. You didn't expect Jarrett Stidham, the quarterback of the Raiders, to go for 23 for 34, 365 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, he did have 2 interceptions, and 1 ended up really costing them the game. But when you can roll over the best defense in the league like that, damn. Congratulations to you, but the Niners were able to get the win in overtime, 37-34. This surprisingly turned out to be just a back-and-forth affair all day long. I mean, every time one team would get the lead, the other team would come right back and score again. And then really, I mean, the Niners just got set up in overtime because Stidham just threw this really bad pass. I think his arm got hit, but regardless, it was intercepted right off the bat. Niners were able, defense just put them right in excellent field goal position. They were able to get the field goal, get the win 37-34. Christian McCaffrey had probably one of his best games as a Niner so far. He had 19 carries, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then Davante Adams. I mean, as bad as the Raiders' season has gone, Davante Adams has been the one and only constant. 7 receptions, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The guy is phenomenal. He had some amazing catches yesterday. He's been a great addition for the Raiders. I mean, they have not had many good things to say about this team, but he's just a phenomenal receiver and just does not get old to watch. It wasn't that great of a game from the Niners, but hey, man, this is the NFL. It doesn't matter how bad the other team is and how good you are on paper. You play hard, and that's just kind of how this game went. It was just a back and forth affair. The Niners defense just got exposed in a couple of areas, but then again, they stepped it right up in overtime when they needed to and got the win when they needed to. And a win is a win. And right now, the 49ers sit at the number 2 seed, and they are also in line for a potential number 1 spot. So we'll see what happens in Week 18. Then the New York Jets were at the Seattle Seahawks, and the Jets decided to pack it on up and head home this week. The Seahawks just stomped the Jets 23-6. This was not even close at all. Kenneth Walker came back for the Seattle Seahawks on the ground. He had 133 yards rushing, but it was just like an all-around just domination by the Seahawks. Didn't really look like the Jets wanted to be there, and they are now officially booted from the playoffs. And the Seahawks are still, as a matter of fact, I believe they have the last wild card spot right now. So they actually are in playoff contention. Then we had the Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers. And man, the Packers, they just absolutely dominated the Vikings yesterday. They got the win 41-17. They finally turned Kirk Cousins into Kirk Cousins. He had, 4 interceptions yesterday. And they were bad interceptions, but, it happens. But it's kind of funny because all week leading up to the game, it was kind of a shit-talking fest between the cornerback of the Green Bay Packers, Jair Alexander, and then, of course, the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. They were jawing back and forth, and Alexander was basically saying, I'm going to shut the dude down, and Jair Alexander backed that talk up. Jefferson was not a factor in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, that entire Minnesota Vikings offense looked exceptionally inept. And they got beat really bad for another time. So, basically, the Vikings are 12-4. But those 4 losses have been very bad losses. And they've got their asses kicked in a couple of these. And the Packers, they are now in a win, and you're in position in the playoffs right now. They play Detroit this week, and whoever wins that matchup between those two gets to go to the playoffs. And so the Packers are actually sitting pretty right now. I mean, their defense is really locking it down. You've got Aaron Rodgers, so you're always set there. Aaron Jones, he's had a great season. And then also Dylan right behind him. So it's like you've got 2 strong running backs. It's really just the receivers have pretty much been shaky for the most part. But other than that, right now, the Packers look pretty damn good. Then the Los Angeles Rams were at the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chargers just dominated from start to finish. They won 31-10. Justin Herbert had a solid game, 21 for 28, 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Mike Williams had some beautiful catches, one beautiful toe drag swag on the sideline there, 94 yards from him. And the Chargers are heading into the playoffs on a nice little winning streak themselves, which is very shocking because the Chargers are one of those teams who have always been known to choke in the big moments. And, hey, right now the Chargers are actually looking pretty damn good and might provide some type of upset come playoff time. We'll see. It depends on the matchups, of course, but we'll see. I like what the Chargers are doing right now, and they're playing good teams. And they're getting healthy, too, because Bosa came back yesterday. So we'll see what happens with the Chargers. And then Sunday Night Football. Actually, it went as expected. But it was a nice little drive there at the end. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. And as I said, it went as expected. It was basically just trading field goals back and forth. And then the Steelers decided to show up on the last drive of the game, and Kenny Pickett would throw the game-winning touchdown to Najee Harris, and the Steelers would end up getting the win 16-13. Kenny Pickett went 15 for 27, 168 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's not doing too much. He's doing just enough to get them the win. Najee Harris had a great night. He went rushed for 111 yards, and then, as I mentioned, he had the game-winning touchdown. But you know, the Ravens, while they're in the playoffs, I mean, this team is in a lot of trouble. I mean, it's not even just that they're missing Lamar Jackson. It's just that they don't provide any type of spark. So I kind of feel like the Ravens might be just one of those one and done playoff teams, but we'll see what happens come playoff time. We still have one more week. And we also still have Monday Night Football tonight. It's a good one, too. Buffalo Bills at the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, the Bills are a 1.5-point favorite. And I kind of have a feeling this is just going to be a back-and-forth affair between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, two of the best quarterbacks in the league. They both have a lot of weapons to choose from on the offensive side of the ball, and they just know how to put it together. So I kind of have a feeling this is going to come down to whoever has the ball last. Whichever quarterback is able to get there, take as much time off the clock as they possibly can, not let the other quarterback get the ball, because both can score super fucking quick. So I just kind of feel like it's going to be one of those games. Whoever's got the ball last, whoever takes all the time off the clock in that last drive and is able to either get the game-winning touchdown or set their team up in field goal position is getting the win tonight. I do have the Buffalo Bills winning 28-24. I just kind of feel like it's one of those things where the Bengals, they're on a nice little winning streak right here. I kind of feel like they're due for a loss, even though the Bills are on a winning streak right now as well. But I just feel like the Bills are the better team slightly. I think their defense is slightly better and might cause a turnover here or two that kind of cost the Bengals in the end. And I feel like the Bills are going to take advantage of the few mistakes that the Bengals will put out there. And so I have the Bills winning a close one, 28-24. Then we had some crazy games in college football this weekend. During the college football playoff, man, I was completely wrong on who would win. And, you know, honestly, I'm glad, because these both turned out to be really solid games. First off, with the Fiesta Bowl, TCU beat Michigan 51-45. And do not let that final score fool you, because TCU dominated Michigan from start to finish. This TCU defense had Michigan running for their fucking lives. This quarterback had no time. Their ground attack couldn't really get going. And yes, they did score 45 points, but man, this TCU defense locked it down, and their offense just looked fucking flawless. Dugan went 14 for 29, 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their running back had 150 yards and a touchdown, and their top receiver Johnston had 163 yards and a touchdown. So they just were really able to put together an excellent game plan and really just shut this Michigan team down. And this Michigan team wasn't no joke. I actually was kind of leaning towards they would possibly win the national championship just because they had a really, really good defense, but they got exposed. I feel like they overlooked TCU, as most of us did, because I said it on Friday's show. I did not believe in TCU whatsoever, and quite frankly, I don't really believe in them against Georgia either. But I digress. They came to play, and they started out the game hot and did not let up. And I honestly, it was just really, they just blew a couple of plays, and that's how Michigan was able to get back in the game. But for the most part, TCU ran away with this game, and I felt like they were winning this game basically from the second quarter on. They just really dominated. It was extremely surprising. And hey, it's nice. That's why we have a college football playoff, because a team like TCU, who a lot of us don't take serious, they are now going to be playing for the national championship, and good for them. Then in the Peach Bowl, I did predict that Georgia was going to win this one, but damn, Ohio State made this a game. So Georgia did barely get the win, 42-41. Holy shit, man. Ohio State, this was back and forth from the jump. But Ohio State, to me, looked like they were in control of this game. in the third quarter and then at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And then it started to slip away from them. And then once Georgia took the lead, I felt like that was it. Even though Stroud, their quarterback, he had this huge he had a bunch of huge plays, but on the last drive to set them up in field goal position, he had this huge run, and it was able to get them in field goal range because it looked like hopeless at this point. But he had this huge run, set them up in field goal position. But unfortunately, their field goal kicker, it was a shank. It was you could see it was not happening from the kick. But Georgia just barely got it, 42-41. What a spectacular game. Bennett, the quarterback of Georgia Bulldogs, he had a fucking phenomenal game. 23 for 34, 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. Honestly, I kind of feel like Ohio State, the only reason why Ohio State lost this game was because of the 2 blown coverages they had, where they basically left 2 receivers just wide ass open for 2 bomb touchdowns from Bennett. And I feel like those were the only 2 plays that really cost Ohio State. Because, Stroud, for the quarterback for Ohio State, amazing game. 23 for 34, 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., he had 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he did get knocked out of the game in the fourth. It was either the third or the fourth quarter. He took a huge hit, and they took him out of the game. And so a lot of people think that's part of the factor, because don't get me wrong, Marvin Harrison Jr. is that dude. When he hits the NFL, that guy could potentially be the first pick overall in the draft, because he's that much of a game changer. At least for Ohio State, he is. But I feel like he's going to hit the NFL and be a star with whoever he's with. So yeah, taking him out of the game is a big deal, but at the same time, I don't feel like that cost them. I feel like those bad defensive blown coverages were pretty much it. But also, these are just 2 really damn good teams, and it came down to the way it was supposed to come down to. And now we have Georgia back in the national championship up against TCU. So we'll see what happens there. We'll talk about that more next week on next Monday's show, because that's when the national championship is going to be. Now getting to the Tropp 10 NBA Power Rankings. Little tiny bit of a shakeup, but still the same number 1, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. They are 24-12, and they are currently on an 11-game winning streak. So this team is still just on some. Past week, they got wins against Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Charlotte Hornets. They are first in field goal percentage right now. They're with 51.2%, and second in 3-point percentage, knocking down 39% of their 3-pointers. Obviously, it's all about Kevin Durant. The guy is having an MVP season and just killing it this season. But the Nets are on a huge tear right now, and you can't deny it. 11-game winning streak. That's the longest winning streak in the NBA currently, and they still remain at number 1. Then at number 2 on my Tropp 10 NBA Power Rankings, I have the Denver Nuggets. Overall record of 24-12. They are 8-2 in their last 10 games. This past week, they beat the Sacramento Kings and the Miami Heat, and then also lost to the Kings. They are second in field goal percentage right now, just behind the Nets with 51%. And then they are above the Nets in 3-point field goal 3-point percentage, and they're in first place, knocking down 39.9% of their 3-pointers, almost 40%. And yeah, that's mostly because of Nikola Jokic, of course. But Nuggets, they are having a great season so far. Then at number 3 on my Tropp 10 NBA Power Rankings, I had the Philadelphia 76ers. Overall record of 21-14. They are 8-2 in their last 10 games. This past week, they did lose to Washington and the New Orleans Pelicans, but they did get a win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Maxey is back. He did come back this week, so now the 76ers are getting healthy. Joel Embiid has been holding it down. He's been having a phenomenal season himself, but now he's getting his dudes back. Harden's been back the last couple of weeks and been on fire. Now they get Tyrese Maxey back, and we'll see what happens with the 76ers. I feel like they're going to become one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and if they're able to stay healthy, this is a team I feel like that is primed to win a championship this year. Then at number 4 on my Tropp 10 NBA Power Rankings, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. Overall record of 23-13. They are currently on a 3-game winning streak, and they are 6-4 in their last 10 games. This past week they they lost to Phoenix, and they beat Toronto and New Orleans. And they are also first in rebounds right now in the league. 49. They're averaging 49 per game, and it's not just Adams. It's of course Ja. He not only is he scoring a lot of points, but dude is just in the paint grabbing rebounds, and you know what? Ja is not that big of a point guard. He's pretty skinny for a point guard, but if the dude's throwing elbows up in the paint, that means you're a scrappy motherfucker. And so he's having a great season, and it's showing with all those rebounds. Then at number 5 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Dallas Mavericks, overall record of 21-16, and they are currently on a 6-game winning streak right now. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. This past week, they beat the Knicks, the Rockets, and the Spurs, and it's just all about Luka. You know, he had that 60-point game earlier in the week. He also dropped another 50 points in another game. I believe that was against Houston, or it was either in the Houston or San Antonio game. I can't recall, but the dude, he's been on fire right now. He's averaging 34.2 points per game and just having a phenomenal fucking season. And the Mavericks, as a team, they're playing pretty well right now. So, 6-game winning streak, not bad. And they're just slowly climbing the ranks over in the Western Conference. Then at number 6 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Boston Celtics, overall record of 26-11. They are 5-5 in their last 10 games. This past week, they beat the Houston Rockets and the Los Angeles Clippers. They still are first place in points per game right now, averaging 119 points per game. Jason Tatum is having an MVP season, of course. And the Celtics, they've just, they're up and down lately. And, when you've got the Nets on an 11-game winning streak and these other teams up above them, they're just playing a little bit better. But the Celtics are still obviously one of the best teams out in the Eastern Conference. Then at number 7 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. Overall record of 23-13. They are 5-5 in their last 10 games. This past week, they beat the Indiana Pacers, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Philadelphia 76ers, but lost to the Memphis Grizzlies. And right now, they are second in points per game, averaging points per game. And right now, they're averaging 118 points per game. So they're just scoring everybody out of the building right now. Zion's having a phenomenal season. He's really been able to avoid any type of serious injuries. He's just been, sitting every once in a while just to get some rest. But overall, the Pelicans are looking like a really solid team out west. Then at number 8 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings of the Cleveland Cavaliers, overall record of 23-14. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. This past week, they lost to the Brooklyn Nets and the Indiana Pacers, but got a win against the Chicago Bulls. They're just playing really solid basketball. They're really hovering out there in the Eastern Conference. They're not really showing that they're like a team that can compete really with the 76ers or the Celtics. They're not really on that level, but they're getting there. And Donovan Mitchell, he's just having a phenomenal season, and he's just, the Cavs, they're looking pretty solid right now. Then at number 9 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings of the Milwaukee Bucks, overall record of 23-13. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games. This past week, they lost to the Bulls and then beat the Timberwolves. But this team just, of course, revolves around Giannis Antetokounmpo having an amazing season right now, averaging 32.1 points per game. 11.8 rebounds per game, and his field goal percentage right now is 53.3%. So he's hitting over half of his shots. So the guy's having a flawless season. And while the Bucks are on the downside right now, hey, it's a long ass season in basketball, and it's pretty much inevitable that you're going to have some type of downslide. And just right now, that's what's going on with the Bucks. But overall, they're still having a phenomenal season. And then rounding out the Tropp 10 NBA power rankings this week, the Indiana Pacers. Overall record of 20-17. They are 6-4 in their last 10 games. This past week, they lost to the New Orleans Pelicans, but got wins against the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Clippers. So they beat some damn good teams this past week. And they're really a silent but deadly team over in the Eastern Conference. You can't really say that they're going to be competitive once the playoffs roll around, but hey, who knows? They might be. There's still a good portion of season to go, but they could also be one of those teams that starts the season off really well and then just falls off once we hit the All-Star break. But right now, Tyrese Halliburton, he's been the guy. He's been just scoring a bunch of points. Miles Turner, he's been getting the rebounds, and this duo right here really has the Pacers looking like a pretty solid team right now, and good enough to make the Tropp 10 this week. Yeah, that is today's show. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the week of sports, and I will talk to you fools on Wednesday.